like to welcome everyone to this meeting, this bill hearings of the Health and Government Operations Committee. We are streaming live from Annapolis. We have 8 bills to hear today. Committee members are limited in terms of the questions. They can ask one per panel. We will hear from all witnesses in support of the sponsor and witnesses in support of a bill first, and then if there's anyone speaking in opposition, and questions will be entertained at the appropriate time. We will begin. The order of bills is this: House Bill 587, 527, 542, 509, 533, 650, 469, and 454. We will begin with House Bill 587. Delegate Watson, Department of Information Technology, State of Information Technology and Cybersecurity and State Agencies reports. Delegate Watson.
Thank you, Delegate Rosenberg, and good afternoon to members of HGO. It's good to be with you. I'm Delegate Ron Watson to present House Bill 587, Status of Information Technology and Cybersecurity and State Agencies on behalf of the Joint Committee on Cyber, Information Technology, and Biotech. As a former military guy, information technology has become, and its related systems, has become the 21st century battlefield. Recall 3 months ago, Baltimore County Public Schools suffered a ransomware attack. In the last few years, state audits have identified cybersecurity vulnerabilities in most of Maryland's 24 school systems. Recall also a year ago, a ransom attack against Baltimore city government, which effectively shut down their computing infrastructure and resulted in $6 million price tag to fix the issue that had to be redirected from their Parks and Recreation funding. In addition, there have been cyber attacks on the Greater Baltimore Medical Center, Salisbury Police Department, Baltimore's 911 dispatch system, St. Mary and Dorchester's government, and in 2019, the Maryland Department of Labor. In addition, attacks have been seen in Frederick Howard County's University of Maryland Medical System, Frederick County's Regional Health System, and who can forget when Maryland was notified by Homeland Security that Russia attempted to hack our election system. This bill requires state agencies to report annually key metrics related to their IT infrastructure to Maryland's Department of Information Technology, which include the number of IT staffing positions, budget breakdowns into services, equipment, applications, software licensing, development and maintenance, modernization projects, initiatives to test and improve security of systems, and data and plans for future years to achieve its IT goals. By the end of each year, Department of Information Technology shall compile, analyze the information, and provide a report to each state agency and the General Assembly with the expressed intent to provide best practices, recommendations to improve our security posture and reduce costs. Furthermore, the information provided to the Department of Information Technologies will allow us to exploit economies of scale, reduce cybersecurity risks, and increase our ability to safely protect sensitive personal and business information. And lastly, I'll say this bill is consistent with the recommendation of the Maryland Cybersecurity Council, and I ask for a favorable report.
Thank you very much, Delegate Watson. Are there any questions of the sponsor? There is no one else signed up to speak in support or in opposition. Chair seeing no hands raised. We thank you very much, Delegate Watson. That concludes the hearing on House Bill 587. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Have a good rest of the day.
Thank you. House Bill 527, St. Mary's County's delegation, and that would be Delegate Morgan on behalf of the delegation.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Hopefully we had a quick bill hearing. I'm just been called over in appropriations. But this bill for House Bill 527 deals with our Human Relations Commission. We're changing the scope of and updating some of the language for its mission statement. And the commission to read, commission shall encourage, ensure equal treatment of all people in compliance with federal, state, and local law and regulations related to housing, employment, and public accommodations. Just trying to update this to some more current language to be more inclusive for everyone. With that, I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Is there a letter of support from the delegation? I don't know if we need that. There is?
Yeah, there should be. If not,
From the commissioners?
there should be.
Okay. Thank you.
If the testimony got submitted on time, there should be there.
Well, the listing says there's from the commission, there's a written letter of favorable written testimony from commissioners of St. Mary's County and the Maryland Commission.
Okay.
Not include the delegations.
Okay. Well, we'll get a delegation letter over there. We might have missed that. My
Fine.
It's a little under the weather with some COVID issues. So.
Okay.
Oh, no.
All right. Any other questions of the witness, of the sponsor? None. Thank you very much. You can
Thank you.
go to appropriations. Next, House Bill 542, Delegate C. Watson. Emergency Management, Chief Resilience Officer, Appointment and Duties. Is Delegate Watson in the waiting room?
She's not with us yet. Let me write to her again.
Mr. Chair, may I make a suggestion?
Yes.
Can we go with, I believe some of his witnesses for House Bill 542 are here, and perhaps we can start with that bill. And
Well, there's no one else signed up to testify. It's just written. There's nobody signed up on 542 oral.
No, that's not true, Delegate. We have David Namazi, Jim Bass, Kelly
Okay,
Leo.
they're not on the list that I have, but let's proceed with those witnesses. Who wishes to testify on House Bill 542?
I'm here, Kelly Leo from the Nature Conservancy.
Okay,
Happy to kick us off if that's works for you.
please,
Great.
please go ahead.
Thank you, everybody, for the opportunity to speak today in support of House Bill 542. For the record, my name's Kelly Leo, and I'm here representing the Nature Conservancy. I'm the director of our Maryland, DC chapter Resilient Coast program. House Bill 542 establishes a Chief Resilience Officer position within the Maryland Emergency Management Agency, and it will coordinate state and local responses to climate impacts, increase our planning capacity, bring private industries into the conversation, and streamline and leverage funding opportunities to achieve resilience at scale. In my nearly 15-year career working with communities on coastal climate adaptation, I've seen firsthand the complexities of resilience and adaptation planning. You really need to involve all of the stakeholders and sectors of society in developing solutions that are going to impact everybody. Adaptation and resilience are really complex, and I cannot emphasize enough the need for this position to break down our silos and work across agencies, departments, and sectors in a really proactive way to meet these challenges head on. My program's work supports the counties on the Lower Eastern Shore of Maryland and consistently has brought to light the consistent disadvantage that rural, less economically advantaged counties and municipalities have in accessing resilience funds. And yet these small local governments frequently lack the matching funds required or even the staff capacity that they need to support resilience efforts so that they really disproportionately need. By creating this Chief Resilience Officer position in MEMA, we'll improve Maryland's ability to access critical new funding streams that FEMA is making available through its new Building Resilient Infrastructure and Communities, or BRIC program. So it's for these reasons that the Nature Conservancy urges a really favorable report on House Bill 542. Thank you. I'm happy to answer any.
Thank you. I now see the list. We also have, if Delegate Watson is not yet here.
Yes, I am here.
Oh, please, go ahead. I'm sorry.
I
Delegate Watson.
apologize. I had technology troubles.
That's okay.
Afternoon, Chair Pendergrass and Mr. Vice Chair, members of the Health and Government Operations Committee. Thank you for allowing me to present House Bill 542, which I believe is the most important piece of legislation that we have this year to ensure that we can handle the impacts of climate change on our state's infrastructure, its economy, and its citizens. This bill unanimously passed in the Senate last year, but it was cut short in the House due to the shortened session. But that is not why you should approve this bill. It should be approved because it makes the best policy solution for what is an urgent problem that is now not receiving the focus and coordination that it should from the state. So resilience is about hazard mitigation, and many communities around the state have been dealing with climate change-induced flash flooding, including mine. But flash flooding is just one thing. As a coastal state, we also must be concerned about the implications of sea level rise, causing increased coastal flooding, as well as other environmental emergencies threatening Marylanders. 81,000 Marylanders are at risk of coastal flooding right now, and 38,000 more will be at risk by 2050. In this same time frame, our state is projected to face up to $19 billion worth of damage due to sea level rise and flooding. So are we as a state capable of preparing for and managing this threat, a threat of this magnitude? Yes, we could be, but it will not happen by chance. It's going to require a great deal of planning and coordination and accountability. And this bill will create the position of Chief Resilience Officer within the Maryland Emergency Management Agency, or MEMA. It would be responsible for coordinating state and local agencies engaged in building resilience to risks related to climate change, as already identified in the Maryland Hazard Mitigation Plan. Number two, leveraging funding streams and technical resources at the federal, state, and local levels to support Maryland resilience efforts. An important point is that FEMA, the Federal Emergency Management Agency, is making a tremendous amount of funding available for resilience efforts because their budget is based on the prior year's expenses. So COVID expenditures will drive up funding, and $10 billion will be on the table to be used for resilience efforts across the country. Three, working with Adaptation and Resiliency Work Group of Maryland Commission on Climate Change to coordinate resilience strategy across the state agencies and updating the resilience strategy for the state. Four, working with the University of Maryland Center for Environmental Science to establish baseline indicators, goals, and metrics to guide resilience efforts and to produce an economic analysis of the state's resilience efforts. Five, working with the Department of Environment to review the state's flood insurance rate maps. And six, engaging with stakeholders across industries in the private sector and in the public sector impacted by climate change and other disasters. Essentially, this position currently exists in several other states and jurisdictions, and it would break down the silos within state, local, and federal levels of government, connecting both the government and private partners in building resiliency and identify and coordinate ways to leverage funding streams. So according to the experts in emergency management, the best opportunity for resilience planning is when it's paired with recovery. So this position will connect hazard mitigation and pre-disaster mitigation of MEMA with climate resilience and adaptation. Those goals are interdependent. So while MEMA handles some of this work now, we do not have the focus or the coordination that is required to maximize the use of funds that are and will be available. The modest fiscal note for this position is small in relationship to the potential benefits and would be far outweighed by the increasing revenue the position would generate through a funding stream. Since the bill has been heard in the Senate, there's an amendment on it that has to do with agriculture. And I'm going to let another member of the panel explain that to you because I am running out of time. But as I wrap this up, I would ask you to think about this question. For how many years were we warned about the likelihood of pandemic? How many years? And as a country, how woefully unprepared we were when it happened. Let's not repeat this kind of mistake with the devastation that is caused by climate change and other hazards. It's already started to happen. Let's require the state to have a laser focus on this now by creating the CRO and to be responsible and accountable for strategies to prepare us and save us money in the long run. One person will coordinate all of these efforts, and creating this office makes the state take resiliency efforts as seriously as they should be taken. I respectfully request a favorable amendment and your consideration of this bill. And there are a few other people that will testify today with additional information. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Delegate Watson. We have 3 additional witnesses who have signed up for oral testimony. David Namazi, I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly, Jim Bass, and Ernie Shea. In that order, if you wish.
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My name is Dave Namazi, and today I'm testifying on behalf of the University of Maryland Center for Environmental Science. Effective management of our coastal resources requires improvements in understanding vulnerability and risk. scientists are developing these holistic approaches to understanding how marshes, wetlands, living shorelines, aquatic grasses, and beach vegetation, as well as rivers, can help stabilize coasts. The Chief Resiliency Officer will coordinate amongst the Maryland Commission on Climate Change, Adaptation and Resiliency Work Group, Maryland Department of the Environment, particularly related to flood insurance maps, and UMCs, related to establishing a resiliency baseline and developing several economic, financial planning, and investment projection reports. Unfortunately, as we all know too well, global emissions of greenhouse gases are increasing, as are the global temperatures. In fact, this past decade is the warmest on record. These projections are going in the wrong direction. Maryland is one of the most impacted states from climate change, along with Louisiana and Florida. An unstable climate regime will impose new burdens on the state's planning and response capabilities, including a need for greater flexibility, greater interagency coordination, and greater ability to rapidly integrate new information and research findings. Therefore, the Chief Resilience Officer coordinating role and developing various reports and tools is important to the state of Maryland in its efforts to plan for continued impacts due to climate change. UMC supports HB 542 and seeks the committee's favorable report. I'll stand by for any questions in this panel. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Bass?
Good afternoon, Chair Pendergrass, Vice Chair, and members of the committee. My name is Jim Bass. I am here. I am the Coastal Resilience Program Manager at Eastern Shore Land Conservancy, and I'm here to support House Bill number 542. Maryland's Eastern Shore is the nation's 3rd most vulnerable community to the impacts of sea level rise and coastal flooding. Yet we often do not receive the same national media attention of coastal Louisiana or the financial assistance of urban Southeast Florida. With these natural hazards, exacerbated by human-caused climate change, they are growing far worse every single year. In my professional role, I have the opportunity to assist Eastern Shore communities in planning and preparing for these costly impacts. Excellent work in the field of climate resilience is currently being done by many state agencies, including the Department of Natural Resources, Department of the Environment, and Department of Transportation. However, in order to provide the required levels of assistance to communities such as ours on the Eastern Shore, greater coordination among state agencies, and increased level of collaboration between state and local partners is required. This bill will provide that coordination and collaboration, resulting in increased funding for communities across the state, expanded levels of public safety, and enhanced levels of environmental health in the face of climate change impacts. Thank you for your time. I respectfully request your favorable report on this important piece of legislation, and I will stand by for any questions you may have. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bass. Mr. Shea?
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Delegate Watson. Thank you for the opportunity to appear and testify in support of this bill today. My name is Ernie Shea. I am president of Solutions from the Land based in Lutherville, Maryland. We are a national farmer-led not-for-profit that works with producers across the country, helping them implement climate-smart agriculture production systems and practices that simultaneously sustainably intensify production, help improve resilience, and reduce greenhouse gas emissions. And it's with this experience that I am supporting the amendment which would authorize the Maryland Department of Agriculture, the Maryland Department of the Environment, and the Hughes Center for Agroecology to conduct a feasibility study for constructing a vulnerability assessment of Maryland agriculture. Climate change is real. As we've heard already this afternoon, it's happening now. Maryland is one of the most impacted states, and it's a major threat multiplier to Maryland agriculture going forward. The evidence is indisputable, documented in global, national, and even state reports, and we're experiencing it daily. We have increased extreme weather events, more intense precipitation. We have periods of extended drought. We have new invasive species and pests. And all of these things combine to create additional threats and challenges for Maryland agriculture. So an unanswered question is, how will these conditions that are increasing in intensity specifically impact Maryland agriculture? And that's what a climate vulnerability assessment will answer. They will also help policymakers and farmers make informed, science-based decisions on how to adapt, improve resilience, and remain economically viable. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you, Mr. Shea. Thank all of the witnesses. Are there any questions? Yes. Delegate Hill, followed by Delegate Johnson, and then Speaker Pro Tem, and then Delegates Leggett. Delegate Hill.
Thank you very much. This is a good piece of legislation. Thank you for bringing it. I just want to get some clarification. There's a lot of specification about coastal hazard and flood mitigation. We've heard a little bit about agriculture, but when I read the fiscal note and quickly going over the language of the bill, I'm not clear that we're talking about all aspects of climate change, or if we're only focusing on coastal water-related things. Can you give me some clarification on that, Delegate Watson? Would this person be charged with being responsible for coordinating our resiliency in all components related to climate change, or is it just focusing on flooding and shoreline and coastal elevation?
It is, if there are a list of 6 items in the bill and in the testimony that spell out what the office would be responsible for. So it does relate to building resilience in the face of climate change, which is, those methods are identified in the Maryland Hazard Mitigation Plan. In addition to that, it's about leveraging the funding for those projects. And it does focus, I would say, mostly on climate change, but it doesn't mean that, it also focuses on the flood insurance maps, for example. It doesn't mean that other areas of hazard cannot be included either now or at some point. But what Maryland, when you think about resilience, it's hazards, it's defending against external threats. When you think about Maryland, we have fewer threats from earthquakes, for example. Our threats are really centered a lot around the water. So that's what this bill is focusing on right now, the flood, flash flood and sea level rise, and other areas of resilience that are called for in the Maryland Hazard Mitigation Plan.
Okay, so you would not object if we made it clearer that those other issues can be addressed by this officer too?
Yeah, I think so. I think that's fine.
Thank you. Delegate Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, panel, for bringing us this bill. I was looking over the physical note. How many additional staffing positions will this position require? Because I see there are reporting requirements and a lot of work to be done.
Yes, Delegate Johnson, and let's see here. It's 2 positions within MEMA and 1.4 contractual positions. So the state expenditures for the first year would be about $275,000. And it would go up a little bit, with the costs in the future years. But I think the key thing to keep in mind, and I mentioned this in the testimony, is it is a modest fiscal note, but it's still, it's a certain amount of money. The state will benefit so much more than that amount of money by leveraging the funding streams that are available at the federal level and by coordinating all of the efforts. MEMA wrote a letter, which I sent to you. Unfortunately, it didn't make it into the bill file, but you all have it on your email. And they explain that while they're doing some of this work now, they do not have the funding to implement this position and the work that this position entails currently. So that's why you see the fiscal note.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thanks for the bill. Thank you.
Thank you. Speaker Pro Tem, Delegate Sample Hughes. Delegates Liga and Delegate Krebs.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Delegate Watson, for the bill and bringing light to this issue. It goes without saying that Dorchester County is literally in some parts underwater, and we're trying to figure out how to streamline the information to get to like Dorchester County Council, et cetera.
Yes.
So I know this is a tall order. I mean, it's a lot of things that you put in here that you expect this to come from this particular bill. But let me ask you, will the work be kind of divided where it's not so overwhelming and really not getting to the crutch of what we need to have done? Is the work going to be tailored so Dorchester County or St. Mary's County, whatever areas are really being diligence and focus that they need?
Well, thank you for that question. It's an important point that you're making about local governments. The whole role of FEMA and MEMA is to support hazard mitigation for localities that can't afford to do it on their own. And as I said, FEMA and MEMA are already doing some of this work, but the real weakness is in the coordination. So this position would be helping to coordinate all of the things that are in the bill, but also the things that you mentioned, and particularly bringing resources and capacity to local governments and jurisdictions to help them, like your county council.
Thank you.
Delegates Liga, followed by Delegate.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thanks, Delegate Watson. I was on E&T for a couple years, and some of these issues came up here and they sounded familiar. So looking at the testimony from the Maryland Department of the Environment, they bring up some concerns about overlapping. So I'm hoping that you can work with them to figure out, obviously if you can figure that out, it'll reduce the fiscal note, but the chief resilient officer's duties will overlap with the statutory authority as the chair of the Maryland Climate Change Commission. So perhaps, that would be something, or maybe you've already thought about it. So I'd love to hear from you on that.
So I think that what you're seeing, if you remember back to what I was saying, the thinking on resiliency in all of the areas across the country has evolved. And the experts now believe that the work of resiliency belongs with emergency management so that they can marry the building resilience and adaptation to pre-hazard mitigation and hazard mitigation. So the Department of Environment does have a couple of pieces that currently would overlap. We maintain that this responsibility really does belong in MEMA, and the author of the bill on the Senate side, Senator Hester, is coming forward with the structure of the office in the next few weeks. She has worked with MEMA and she's also worked with the Maryland Department of the Environment. So in some senses, I think it's the older way of doing things is at play here, and that we need to be thinking about how we're going to solve this in the future through coordination, because remember, FEMA is where the money is. FEMA is where the funding is. And that's why we want to make sure that this position is in MEMA. And then there will need to be some resolution between the issues with MDE.
And that, yes. Well, thank you. I hope if you need a copy of that letter, just let us know.
I have it. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Delegate. Delegate Krebs.
Thank you. Thank you, Delegate Watson. I had similar kinds of questions about the coordination. They were talking about coordination and collaboration with DNR, MD, MDOT. From what I can see right now, I don't see a vision for how this is all put together with MDE, because right now MDE is responsible for flood mitigation, maps, and is in their testimony. So I think it would be helpful for this committee to understand exactly who would be doing what and what responsibilities would be transferred out of MDE, because right now it seems like you're adding one more group of people to almost coordinate and collaborate with some conflicting responsibilities or overlapping responsibilities. So it'd be nice for us to understand exactly who would be doing what.
Okay, there should be a graphic in your testimony. I mean, in your bill file, a graphic. Look for that. That's sort of like a flow chart that would help answer some of those questions. But also, I want to point out that the National Governors Association held a resilience retreat a few years ago, and out of that retreat came a work group in Maryland that is hosted by MEMA, and that work group aligns the state resilience efforts. And that's been going on since 2019. So what we're saying is that they are already trying to coordinate participation from over 22 state agencies in a work group with people who have full-time jobs doing other things. They are headed in the right direction, but what they need is a leader to coordinate all of it. And I think your points about if there is some overlap, it needs to be addressed. That's 100%, I agree with you on that. But don't lose the forest for the trees is my point. We can work that stuff out with MDE and MEMA as we go forward.
Okay, I just asked that our subcommittee look at the statutory requirements of MDE currently and what this would do, and if there's any conflict between those statutory requirements, if this bill would be enacted. Thank you.
That makes sense.
Thank you, Delegate. There being no further questions and no further oral testimony, this concludes the hearing on House Bill 542. Next bill, committee member.
Thank you.
Bill, thank you, Delegate. Next bill is House Bill 509. Delegate Acevero, 9/11 specialists, classification as first responders. Delegate Acevero.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Please.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I will start off with my first bill. For the record, Delegate Gabriel Acevero, presenting House Bill 5. Oh, thank you. Perfect. Now I have 5 minutes. Presenting House Bill 509, the 911 specialist designation. And colleagues, this is a very straightforward and simple bill. What in essence it does is it recognizes the work of so many 911 specialists who undoubtedly keep us safe, yet aren't currently classified as first responders. A first responder status conveys certain special privileges that, given their role in our society, 911 specialists certainly deserve. But despite that important role, 911 specialists are not covered. My bill, House Bill 509, is intended to rectify that and to ensure that with all the stresses that come with the job, from calls from Marylanders facing unimaginable circumstances, from disaster to injury and to death, to the result from just a profession such as PTSD and having to hear the pain of so many victims and folks that you help on a daily basis. This bill ensures that we recognize their work and we recognize their positions by designating 911 specialists as first responders. I will also add that the 9G11 Commission recommends that making 911 specialists first responders. It is something that they support, and it is not only what the bill would accomplish, but it would send a very strong message to our 911 specialists who do this work, that we see them, we value their work, and we believe that they should also be covered. So with that, colleagues, I ask for a favorable report, and I appreciate your time. Thank you.
Okay, there are witnesses in support of the bill. who wish to provide oral testimony. Bruce Bariato, John Ripley, Denise Riley, Antoinette Ryan Johnson.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, good afternoon. For the record, my name is Bruce Bariano, and I'm here on behalf of the Maryland Rangers Association, the state park rangers in our forests and parks throughout the state of Maryland. First, I want to commend Delegate Acevero for the introduction of this bill. It's warranted, it's needed, it's fully supported. The park rangers are first responders in their area, the parks and the forests. And as we know, during the COVID, and I think it will continue thereafter, there's been a dramatic increase in the visitation, the use of the forests and parks throughout the state of Maryland. And park rangers are, by uniform, by activity, by equipment, they are very involved in maintaining the safety and well-being and being completely available to the visitors and the users of the parks and the forest while they're there. I have submitted to the committee what I sincerely believe is a friendly amendment, and that is on page 3 of the bill, after line 11 is adding the Maryland Park Rangers to the category in the bill, and would urge favorable consideration and acceptance of that amendment. Clearly, under the circumstances of what the other named professions and occupations perform under this, the park rangers fit naturally and logically. Again, my thanks to the sponsor of the bill, and I would ask for a favorable report with this amendment, and happy to answer any questions you.
Thank you, Mr. Bariano. Mr. Ripley?
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you, Mr. Chair and members of the HGO Committee. My name is John Ripley. I'm the president of the Baltimore County Federation of Public Employees, representing about 300 active and retired 911 center employees in Baltimore County. Over the years, I've witnessed these hardworking men and women perform highly technical jobs and countless acts of sacrifice and commitment. These jobs are so highly technical. It's the only bargaining group that we represent with a 2-year probationary period. These 911 center professionals are our true first responders, and you've heard that accolade before, but it truly does speak for itself. We can have the best police and fire department in the county or in the state or wherever, but they will only be as good as the 911 center employees who take that call and accurately dispatch that information. Again, I urge your support for HB 509, and I thank you for this opportunity to speak. And thank you, Delegate, for sponsoring this legislation.
Thank you, Mr. Ripley.
I'm sorry?
Go ahead, please.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chair and members of the committee. I'm Denise Riley, Director of Policy and Legislative Affairs for the American Federation of Teachers, Maryland. 911 specialists are classified as clerical workers. This is wrong, and it is time to correct it. Their work is an essential part of emergency response. Currently, there is about a 13% vacancy rate for 911 specialists in Maryland. This creates a major problem for emergency operations in our state, especially now with next generation upgrades, which will require more 911 specialists. With next generation 911 specialists, we'll see an increase in their workload, and it will include a full range of digital platforms. 911 specialists are skilled individuals who work in stressful environments. Every call is a crisis. Every choice can have life or death consequences. Filling these positions is challenging, and with fewer trained professionals, 911 wait times are increasing. As you can see from the bill's fiscal note, reclassifying 911 specialists will not automatically make them eligible for enhanced benefits. Those will still need to be negotiated in collective bargaining agreements and changes to the law. Legislation has passed in the U.S. House to reclassify 911 specialists, but it has been held up in the U.S. Senate. Maryland has been a leader on many issues, and by joining states like California and Texas to reclassify 911 specialists, it will help put pressure on the U.S. Senate to make it national policy. 911 specialists are first responders. Recognizing them as such will better reflect the work they do, help to recruit quality candidates, and provide them with dignity they deserve. AFT asks for a favorable report on HB 509, and we thank the delegate for bringing this bill.
Thank you, Ms. Riley. Ms. Antoinette Ryan Johnson.
Yes, good afternoon, Mr. Chair and members of the House Health and Government Operations Committee. My name is Antoinette Ryan Johnson, and I am the president of the City Union of Baltimore, AFT Local 800, the union for employees working for the City of Baltimore and the Baltimore City Public School System. Our union is the certified bargaining agent for approximately 3,000 municipal employees, including approximately 200 911 and police dispatch employees who currently work to answer 911 calls and dispatch to police officers within the City of Baltimore. On behalf of those workers, we ask for a favorable report for House Bill 509. I believe the committee has my written testimony, so I will offer some highlights. Our members who are on the other line when a resident calls 911 have been providing heroic services to our communities despite the impact of COVID-19. City employees working for 911 have continued to be the true first responders, often being the very first person a resident reaches out to when a life-threatening emergency arrives. And yet, for some reason, they have not been considered first responders. The passage of this bill corrects that error. Members of the committee, I cannot understate how important our first responders are to our community and officers at normal times, and especially so in a time when merely leaving one's residence is a threat to one's life under a global pandemic. COVID-19 has certainly taken a toll on our residents, but without the work of first responders, I shudder to think of how worse our situation under COVID would have become. It is illogical that these specialists are excluded from being classified as first responders, and so we call for a favorable report for House Bill 509. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. I see Delegate Sample Hughes and Delegate Krebs in that order have questions. Delegate Sample Hughes. Or do you have a question or no? Well, let's proceed then with Delegate Krebs.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for all of you in your comments about the importance of our 911 specialists and their value in our system. As a member of the 911 Statutory Commission that's been charged with making policy recommendations to this committee for the last 3 years, I was sort of surprised to see this bill because this is not something that we had put on our priority list right now. So I guess we're trying to prioritize, and we've gotten lots of funding through this committee for 911 specialists. We've renamed them as specialists. We've given them training. We've spent hundreds of hours in the last 3 years working on the Next Generation Commission. And I guess what I wanted to ask the sponsor of the bill, he said this came from the commission, and I'm on the commission. This was not something that we recommended. And we do have some bills that will be in front of us in the next couple of weeks that were recommendations of the commission. So I was just wondering how this sort of got out of the statutory charge of the commission that we've been working through. And this sort of was presented as it came out of that commission. And I do not believe that's accurate. If the sponsor of the bill is available.
Sponsor available, still here?
Yes, Mr. Chair, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Correct. So to be clear, I didn't say that the 9G11 Commission supports the bill, but it recommends making 911 specialists first responders. The bill is seeking to accomplish that. I didn't say that the commission or any particular member supports this piece of legislation. What we are attempting to do through legislation is follow through on the recommendations. And what's clear is that the work that 911 specialists do are that of first responders. And this bill is just being consistent and recognizing them as they should be recognized.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. We'll resolve that at a later time if needed.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
There being no other questions from the committee members, this concludes the hearing on House Bill 539. Delegate Acevero, House Bill 533, State Government Prevention of Genocide and Crimes Against Humanity and the Commission on Genocide Prevention. Delegate Acevero.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. All the easy bills this afternoon. Mr. Chair, members of the Health and Government Operations Committee, for the record, Delegate Gabriel Acevero, here to present House Bill 533 that, as was mentioned, would ensure that as a state, our values and who we are as Marylanders are reflected in the way that our tax dollars are invested. It ensures that we establish a commission on genocide prevention to further the state's initiative to help end genocide and to not do business, in essence, with governments that engage in genocide or crimes against humanity. I want to be clear about a couple of things in the few minutes that I have, but to also clarify some things as well around how this bill would potentially impact our business community. But as to the bill, what it would do, it would direct state government to, in essence, enter into contracts with corporations that have adopted a formal policy of refusing to do business with governments that engage in genocide or crimes against humanity. It would require the state treasurer to ensure that any shares held by the state are voted in favor of shareholder resolutions that ask companies to adopt that policy. The bill would establish a commission on genocide prevention to research which governments are at risk of committing genocide or crimes against humanity. It would identify corporations that do business with those governments and hold hearings on the implementation of this act, that this bill, that if it were to be passed, would in essence govern this commission's work. What the bill does not do is it does not create any new regulations on business or commerce. It simply requires state government to change its own internal procurement and investment policies and practices, and ensures that it's in line with Maryland's values. What the bill doesn't do, it does not restrict procurement. It only applies to corporations with over 100 million in annual revenues. And as such, these procurement restrictions do not affect in any way small and often purely local businesses that contract with the state of Maryland. What this bill also doesn't do, it does not conduct foreign policy. As I mentioned earlier, what we are ensuring is that as a state and as Marylanders, our values are aligning with where our tax dollars go. We're not conducting foreign policy with House Bill 533. It does not involve Maryland in foreign relations, but what it does is it requires us to change our own internal policy, and we don't interact with any formal foreign government rather in any way. And as far as as far as constitutional provisions, this bill has none. It would simply act ethically as a participant in the marketplace for goods, services, and capital. The state of Maryland under this law would clearly avoid acting unconstitutionally to conduct its own foreign policy. So we do not and will not be engaging in that. But the bill in any way does not violate any constitutional provisions whatsoever. And so, as I mentioned earlier, it's about us aligning our values as a state and as a people. I think it's a great framework for us to not just send a clear message to the rest of the country, but to the world that the kind of atrocities that we're seeing being committed, that we are taking responsible action to ensure that we are not associated and with that, but we're also taking a stand. I will add that, this is not uncommon. You would have shareholders in companies that would vote in order to support certain policies, whether it's around the environment, whether it's around crimes against humanity or genocide. This is just ensuring that we as a state do that. So I would ask colleagues for a favorable report so that we can not only, and I'll just add really quickly before I wrap up, there were some amendments, sponsor amendments that were submitted to 533 that I worked with the Maryland State Retirement Agency on to ensure that the bill not only preserves the intent, but also makes it workable for this agency that this bill would have implications for. So the amendments submitted, which you all should have, or if you don't, you will have shortly, are amendments that I worked on with the State Retirement Agency, and I asked for a favorable report. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Delegate. There are 5 individuals who wish to testify in support of the bill. If we could take them in the following order: Michael DeLong, Huzafa Muhammad, Hannah Zubari, Tony Voglino, Andrew Palmer.
Michael unfortunately isn't able to be with us today.
Okay, Huzafa Muhammad, I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. Chairman and House Health and Government Operation Committee members, on behalf of the Council on American Islamic Relations, I want to thank you for this opportunity to testify in strong support of House Bill 533, entitled State Government Prevention of Genocide and Crimes Against Humanity and the Commission on Genocide Prevention. CARE is America's largest Muslim civil rights and advocacy organization. According to Article 2 of the Convention of the Prevention and Punishment of the Crime of Genocide under the United Nations' Office on Genocide Prevention and the responsibility to protect, genocide is defined as any of the following acts committed with an intent to destroy, in whole or in part, a national, ethnic, or racial or religious group. As such, killing members of the group, causing serious bodily or mental harm to members of the group, deliberately inflicting on the group conditions of life calculated to bring about its physical destruction in whole or in part, imposing measures intended to prevent births within the group, and forcibly transferring children of the group to another group. Currently, there are several documented cases of nations around the world engaging in the systematic destruction of ethnic minority groups and unspeakable crimes against humanity, including Myanmar and China. This bill aims to make sure Marylanders' tax dollars are spent in an ethical way by directing the state to only enter into contracts and do business with those corporations which have adopted a formal policy of refusing to do business with genocidal regimes. This bill also aims to establish the Maryland Commission on Genocide Prevention. The purpose of this commission is to conduct research on governments around the world and identify which governments are at risk of committing genocide or crimes against humanity. This commission will then hold hearings on the implementation of the act and ensure that Maryland taxpayer dollars are spent in accordance with Maryland values. This bill will communicate to corporations that Maryland is committed to protecting human rights around the world and that our state will not enter into business with any corporation that conducts business with genocidal regimes. Therefore, we respectfully urge your vote in favor of it. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you, Mr. Muhammad. Hannah Zubari.
Yes, hello. Thank you, Chair and committee members, for hearing our testimony. My name is Hannah Zuberi, and I'm a resident of Maryland and here to represent Justice for All, a human rights organization with consultative status at the United Nations, and the Maryland Muslim Advocates, a coalition of over 45 mosques and Muslim organizations. We're living in perilous times, and the threat of mass atrocity is increasing around the world. As an organization committed to anti-genocide work for the past 25 years since the Bosnia genocide, Justice for All wholeheartedly supports the Maryland End Genocide Bill H533, which we understand will direct the state government to formalize contracts only with corporations that refuse to do business with governments that engage in genocides or crimes against humanity. Failure to confront the rise of authoritarianism today reminds us of the period of appeasement before the beginning of World War II and the Holocaust. It would be a shame on us if never again proved an empty slogan. When we consider our duty to prevent future genocides, placing common sense conditions on procurement and investing is one of the most effective nonviolent alternatives to conflict. Many corporations have come to embrace social responsibility. Ethically sourced products have become attractive to many consumers, We're confident that shareholders will recognize the importance of adopting a policy of refusing to do business with governments that engage in genocide or crimes against humanity. The Uyghur people, for example, are subject to terrible privations in East Turkestan or Xinjiang and throughout China, as 2 million Uyghurs are forced to work in factories and re-education camps, with their culture being systematically erased. In the same way, in Burma, Myanmar, the Rohingya minorities have undergone a genocide with hundreds of villages destroyed, mass killings and mass rapes following decades of extreme persecution. Quite recently, the same military perpetrators have committed a coup against Burma's elected government. Moreover, there are several other frightening examples of demonization and mass displacement in the Central African Republic, in Nigeria, and in indigenous people areas around the world. It is crucial that we make it inconvenient to turn a blind eye to crimes against humanity wherever they take place. We recognize that some overseas companies in China, for example, may agree to support socially responsible policies, but be still implicated in forced labor. This is another reason why we support this well-designed bill. It will establish the Maryland Commission on Genocide Prevention to research abuses and hold hearings on the implementation of the bill. We are confident that taxpayers will not wish to see their monies flowing to companies complicit in behavior so anti-ethical to human rights norms and the principles of democracy. We understand that some cities like Dayton, Ohio, have already voted to support similar policies. It's time for states to show their moral leadership as well. Maryland has come a long way since it was a slave state. Over the decades, it took—
Can you conclude, please?
Yes. So we would like all the committee to pass H533. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much for your testimony. Tony Voglino.
Good afternoon, members of the committee. I'm the compliance officer at the Maryland State Retirement and Pension System, and I'm responsible for the shareholder proposal voting at the system. We would like to reiterate our support for House Bill 533 with amendments. House Bill 533 relates to investments with governments who are involved in genocide or crimes against humanity. I believe it's important to note that over the last 5 years, and with over 400 votes during those 5 years, we've only seen about 5 shareholder proposals related to genocide and crimes against humanity. If House Bill 533 is passed, we hope with friendly amendments that would allow the system to vote these shareholder proposals in agreement with the bill language and also in line with our fiduciary duties with this as a system. Our testimony has outlined the areas of concern we have with the bill. I'm sorry, I misquoted myself. It's 400,000 votes in the last 5 years. Our testimony has outlined the areas of concern we have with the bill, which the bill sponsor, Delegate Aceverno, is open to such amendments. And while we have not received the final amendments, once received, we will review and provide comments to the sponsor with any issues. We want to thank Delegate Aceverno for working with the system to address the issues of the requirements of House Bill 533, and we support the bill with amendments as outlined in our testimony. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Palmer. Andrew Palmer.
He should be in the room.
All right, well,
Here I am. I'm
okay,
sorry.
we got you.
Very good. Thank you. Andrew Palmer, Chief Investment Officer for the State Retirement System. I'm speaking on behalf of the board. We would like to express our support for House Bill 533 with amendments. As Tony mentioned, we had met with the sponsor and discussed amendments to the bill in order for the agency to be able to carry out its requirements. There were a number of technical issues that we discussed and 2 main topics. House Bill 533 requires the board to vote in favor of shareholder resolutions that ask the company to adopt a policy of refusing to do business with governments engaged in genocide or crimes against humanity. This provision of the bill is problematic for the system as it conflicts with the fiduciary duty applicable to the board under state and federal law. Specifically, by law, the board is required to act solely in the interest of the participants and for the exclusive purpose of providing benefits for these participants. And this fiduciary standard applies to voting proxies. The board must act solely in the interest of beneficiaries. As the as the bill requires the board to vote in absolute terms for all proposals that ask a company to adopt a policy of refusing to do business with governments engaged in genocide. This vote for all provision includes it precludes consideration of potential conflicts with fiduciary duty to the system, so that we could not carry out the requirements of the bills without these amendments. The bill also requires the board to report to the Genocide Commission created by the bill. The board would suggest reporting to the Joint Committee on Pensions would be consistent with its ongoing reporting practice. And I can testify that the Joint Committee does a thorough job of providing oversight for the system. We want to thank Delegate Acevedo for working with the system to address the issues of the requirement of House Bill 533, and we support the bill with amendments as outlined in our testimony. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Palmer, and all the witnesses who have testified. Does any member of the committee have any questions to ask of any of the sponsor or any of the witnesses? Chair seeing no indications of such interest, this concludes the hearing on House Bill 533. The next bill is House Bill 650, Delegate Boyce, Minority Business Enterprises, Sexual and Gender Minorities, Imari's Business Pride Act. Delegate Boyce.
Hi, good afternoon. I just jumped on. It was pulling me in. Dear Chair or Vice Chair and members of the Health, Government and Operations Committee, for the record, I am Regina T. Boyce testifying on HB 650, Minority Business Enterprises, Sexual and Gender Minorities, Imari's Business Pride Act. HB 650 alters the definition of socially and economically disadvantaged individual for the purposes of certifying certain minority business enterprises to include certain sexual and gender minorities. Currently, Massachusetts, Pennsylvania, and California, and a host of cities, 14, already have recognized certified LGBT business certified enterprises, with the following states in the process of to recognize LGBTs: Oregon, New York, New Jersey, Delaware, Connecticut, and Illinois. In November of 2019, the Maryland Public Service Commission approved policy to include the National LGBTQ Chamber of Commerce certified LGBT business enterprises in contracting and procurement opportunities. In 2018, our very own Baltimore City, through Executive Order 2018-02, recognized LGBTQ owner business entities, those with 51% or more ownership by LGBTQ plus individuals. With more diverse providers, Maryland can achieve statewide goals and save taxpayers' dollars by creating greater competition while driving down bid prices. The LGBT business owners add 1.7 trillion to the US economy. I want to take this opportunity to thank my constituent, Terry Street, who submitted this bill request in honor of his brother, Imari, who passed away. Imari designed and sold gender-affirming apparel for trans men. Thank you for your time and consideration of HB 650. I urge a favorable report. Thank you.
Thank you, Delegate. There are two witnesses who wish to testify in support of House Bill 650, Betsy Cerullo, Terry Thruett. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly.
Thank you for the opportunity to testify today on behalf of the LGBT business community in Maryland as in support of HB 650. I am Betsy Cerullo, co-founder of the Maryland LGBT Chamber of Commerce and CEO of AdNet AccountNet based in Baltimore. In addition to my testimony, in your packets, you have the expert testimony and comprehensive precedent outlined by the National LGBT Chamber of Commerce, as well as my friend and inspiring colleague, Rafael Ortiz, someone who, like me, has had to decide when it's safe to be out in business, even in 2021. In just the last 5 years, more than 25 states, cities, and agencies have joined more than 400 corporations who intentionally include LGBT-owned businesses as part of their supplier diversity development programs. This includes precedent in Maryland, as both the City of Baltimore and the Maryland Public Services Commission have intentionally recognized LGBT businesses as diverse and disadvantaged. NGLCC works directly with state certification offices to offer free verification of LGBT business enterprise status. There will be no new costs or additional red tape for business owners. In fact, the Chief Procurement Officer of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts said this policy has been a huge win for small businesses and taxpayers. This is exactly what will happen in Maryland. It is extremely important to note that including LGBTEs and others will not detract or diminish the contracting opportunities for our friends already in the diverse business community. This bill does not make any changes to Maryland's MBE or WBE programs or set-asides for diverse communities. This bill will only empower the state to attract more qualified suppliers. I am not asking you to give us special consideration to be awarded contracts. I am asking for the opportunity to be heard and seen through the procurement process. As an elder in the business community, I have a well-established company. I am here today because the younger LGBT business owners deserve equity and opportunity to jumpstart their companies through and post-COVID. In a progressive thinking state such as Maryland, we must continue to take care of our own, and that means every business owner. Thank you for your time, and Delegate Bose for sponsoring this bill.
Next witness.
Hi, all. Thank you. And particularly thank you, Delegate Boyce, for introducing this. Thank you for allowing me to testify today regarding in favor of HB 650. Amari is my younger brother, and I think of him daily. I say is because although he passed in October 2019, he still lives on in the hearts of everyone that knew him. Every member of my family wears these yellow bracelets in his honor, for suicidal awareness. Prior to his death, he was a budding entrepreneur seeking to fill a need that is often overlooked: gender-affirming apparel for transgender young men like himself. This goal guided him to launch Alpha Apparel. In addition, Amari is an artist at heart and chased his passion for painting to earn a certificate to paint professionally for local contractors and civil works. He also participated with the Baltimore Safe Haven and Baltimore Trans Alliance. The title of the bill, Amari Business Pride Act, is because in our family, we refer to the LGBT community as the pride community because there's so much joy represented. Okay. By supporting this bill, again, as Ms. Sorello has stated, we will not be altering or changing any of the existing procurement activities. We would just be expanding the definition to include LGBTE businesses. There are over 1.4 million LGBT-owned businesses in the United States. This would increase the pool of potential contractors through our 27 agencies that is currently noted in the fiscal policy note available to you all. There was over $217 million alone through COVID-19 procurement opportunities. We could have expanded on that for the LGBT community and allowing them to participate.
Thank you very much for your testimony. Thank you. Are there any questions from the members of the committee for the sponsor or for those who have testified in support? Yes, Delegate Charles.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And thank you so much to Delegate Boyce for bringing this bill. You know, I was listening to the testimony and a couple of questions came upon in my mind. And I wanted to see the impact when we start talking about procurement and we know the issues that minority businesses, African-American owned, women-owned businesses face as far as making sure there's equality and the distribution of funds and resources. How can we protect to make sure because it's already known that in the business community, it's heavily occupied by white male-owned businesses. How do we make sure that in this particular instance, we're not pushing Black-owned businesses, woman-owned businesses out of the way, creating this opportunity?
That's, I'm sorry, Delegate Charles, before I hand it over to Betsy, I mean, that's a great question. I think that's a commonly asked questions. And for me, you know.
Excuse me, Delegate Boyce, we have a rule in the committee.
I'm sorry.
Excuse me, but we have a rule in the committee. And the rule is that we ask a question and we get one answer from anyone, either sponsor or panel member. If you would kindly choose the person to answer the question with one answer, we would appreciate
Betsy,
it.
you're welcome to answer the question.
Thank you.
Thank you. What I can tell you, being a woman in the program and also my colleagues who are from other diverse communities, there is an incredible level of pride once we are allowed to stand up and be seen as LGBTE. And what that does is that allows more of my colleagues and myself to participate because we're seen as being LGBT. I believe, and I have seen in my work with NGLCC, and Jonathan Lovitz, who is on this call, is our national policy expert, is that more people, more suppliers are coming to the table who are LGBT certified by having that certification, even over the other diverse certifications. It's really a level of pride that has brought most of us. And I know Jonathan can speak more to that if you would allow him.
No, that's, Chairman's made clear, that's the extent of the response. Anyone else who has a question of the proponents? Chair seeing none, thank you very much. There is one individual, Vince McAvoy, who has signed up in opposition. Mr. McAvoy?
Yes. Thank you, Sandy, and thank you, Delegate, and thank you, Committee. Appreciate the time on this. And I'm sorry to hear about the sponsors related parent suicide condolences. So the concern that I have with this bill is actually as it's written in the code. The code states that there is a rebuttable presumption, and that rebuttable presumption states that an individual who's a member of this minority group is socially and economically disadvantaged. So I want to pull from what we just heard because that's not true in this case, and that's why I'm in opposition. You think of Ellen, you think of Jack Dorsey, lesbian lawyers. We have those in the state legislature. These are not, as a group, disadvantaged. The number just given was 1.7 trillion with a T and 1.4 million businesses, which means well accepted and well funded, which goes against that presumption that we're talking about. So it's not warranted. It's as if Mormons were saying we're not rich, but they couldn't work together to band up and lift those that they choose. Further, it's not provable. I worked with 3 white homosexuals at T. Rowe Price downtown in my unit. They were highly paid professionals. 2 had gone asexual. Would they still be able to get the benefit? How would you even prove that? And finally, this lifestyle choice is not accepted by all Marylanders, and many, if asked by an anonymous survey, would say no, don't include this on that list of other characteristics. Okay, so because some of or most of the characteristics are warranted, provable, unable to be self-sufficient that we already have in the rebuttable presumption. They don't work in highly paid professional roles like we've spoken about here. They're thus thus are not to be disincluded. So thank you for your time.
Thank you. Any questions of this witness from the committee members? Chair seeing none, that concludes the hearing on House Bill 650. Next bill is House Bill 469.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Delegate, for presenting the bill. Next bill is House Bill 469. Delegate Forbes, state-funded construction and major renovation projects, panels requirement. Delegate Forbes.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair Pendergrass. Good afternoon, Delegate Rosenberg.
members of the Health and Government Operations Committee, and visiting members of Appropriations. For the record, I'm Delegate Kathy Forbes, and I appreciate the opportunity to present House Bill 469, a bill that will require schools and other buildings constructed and renovated with state funding to be designed, engineered, and built with rooftop solar panels. Maryland's current renewable energy goal is 30.8% from Tier 1 sources, including 7.5% from solar energy. In each of the coming years, that renewable energy goal increases. By 2030, the goal is to have 50% of our energy coming from renewable sources, with solar energy providing 14.5% of that renewable energy. A December 2019 report by the Department of Natural Resources indicates that Maryland is not meeting and will not meet the solar carve-out goals between this year and 2029. So what can we do to achieve these standards? With last week's veto override of the Blueprint for Maryland's Future, the landmark Built to Learn Act will be taking effect. Built to Learn will invest an additional $2.2 billion in school construction over 5 years. I see this as an opportunity to invest in renewable energy by requiring those schools to be built with solar panels. As a longtime education advocate with a background in school construction advocacy, I know that every one of those school construction dollars is precious. In school construction, there is a longer list than there is dollars at all times for all jurisdictions. So you may be thinking that if the system if a system is forced to invest in solar panels, there will be fewer dollars for more projects. First of all, although there is an initial cost to solar panels, it's estimated that those costs for the panels can be recouped in energy savings in 7 years. Solar panels are more efficient and more cost-effective than ever before. Additionally, there is nothing in this bill that prevents jurisdictions from entering into a public-private partnership for the installation and maintenance of these solar panels. Today on my panel, you'll hear from former Delegate Gary Brewster. He's now wearing the hat as volunteer chair of the Maryland State Fair and Agricultural Society. Gary will share with you the success story of solar panels mounted on the buildings of our Maryland State Fairgrounds. These panels came at no cost to the nonprofit State Fairgrounds and will reduce the energy bills for the next 15 years. Not only have they done something that benefits the environment, they will enjoy the additional money in their operating budget for years to come. All school systems and local governments would enjoy those cost savings. In effect, the fairgrounds have turned their rooftops into a profit center. The fairgrounds are not a unique situation. July 8th, 2020 article in the Washington Post shared details of the metro system in DC selling rights to install solar paneled carports and canopies at 4 rail stations. The Metro General Manager, Paul Wiedefeld, stated, "This project advances the region's sustainability goals while generating revenue to help keep Metro safe and affordable in an extremely tight budget environment." So the bill before you today saves money and the environment. Another benefit to the rooftop solar installations is that they preserve our farmlands. Rooftop solar is a more efficient and fiscally responsible method of collection than transferring energy from the solar farms. Rooftop installations protect our Maryland farmlands. As we face the very real effects from climate change, it's imperative that state and local governments make renewable energy resources a priority. It's the right thing to do, and this is the perfect opportunity to do it. I thank you for your time this afternoon, and I ask for a favorable report on House Bill 469.
I would like to point out before we go to the other witnesses that Delegate Krim and Metzger are in attendance on behalf of the Appropriations Committee. Certainly, if you do have any questions, we welcome you. The next 2 witnesses are former Delegate Gary Brewster and David Murray. Welcome.
Who's going first?
Gary, you're first.
Okay.
Delegate Brewster.
Thank you very much, Dean Rosenberg and Chair Pendergrass and Delegate Forbes. We thank you for your leadership as well. you know, when the coronavirus pandemic hit last year, it was a terrible year for your Maryland State Fair. And we are a 501c3 nonprofit. We are led by volunteers, and we lost 2/3 of our annual income. We thought, what can we do to be helpful and to be good citizens and to save money? We decided to do solar, and we had no idea what we were doing. And we explored opportunities to buy, to lease, what was available. And what we found out amazed us, and I hope it will amaze you too. We looked at our 4-acre cow palace where we currently do coronavirus testing and vaccinations. It's 160,000 square feet. Then we looked at the flat roof on our sheep, swine, and goat barn, which is almost as big. And so then we brought in solar companies and we said, we're broke. We got no money. We'd like to cut our electric costs and we'd like to be good citizens. What can we do? And we were surprised at the number of companies that bid to get the job. We went with a local Maryland company. They started in March. They finished in October. They put in 10,000 hours worth of labor, cost us absolutely nothing. Not then, not now, not ever. And it's estimated to save us $1.2 million over the next 15 years. We got 7,000 solar panels. And in addition to that, we get an educational kiosk for our 2 million annual visitors to teach them about the savings of energy and to be responsible. The carbon footprint reduction is 2,000 tons a year, the equivalent of 11,000 trees or over 3 million miles driven. Again, all at no cost whatsoever, and it's going to save us $1.2 million. I just don't know how we could have a better win-win-win. We thank you very much for your support of this legislation and for your time.
Thank you, Delegate Brewster. Next witness, Mr. Murray.
Thank you so much, Mr. Vice Chair, and thank you to Delegate Forbes for her leadership on this important issue. My name is David Murray. I serve as Executive Director of the Chesapeake Solar and Storage Association. We represent the 4,500 Maryland solar workers, as well as those in Virginia in the District of Columbia. This bill is a win-win-win. This is actually my second time appearing just after former Delegate Brewster, and it's always a very tough act to follow because he really captures how not only can nonprofits like the State Farm, our schools, our other public institutions can save from solar, but how it creates an educational opportunity for students and members of the community. So not only are we investing in local Maryland businesses like the one that did the Maryland State Fairgrounds, but we're really ensuring that we're meeting our climate goals and our energy diversification goals. Rather than importing power from Pennsylvania or Ohio like we do with 40% of our electricity generation, we're creating small power plants on top of every single school that is saving these schools money in the long term. And I think it's safe to say that other students will look at these solar panels and say, wait a minute, they're saving money, they're creating economic investment, they're allowing us to generate our own power, and if they have a battery, store it during tough times like we're seeing in Texas, maybe I want to go into the advanced energy economy as well. And so I want to emphasize too that nonprofits like a school can enter into a power purchase agreement, which allows for them to put no money down and have a flat electricity rate from the panels over time, meaning they save money on their electric rates over the decade and ensure that they can use those cost savings everyone. So I urge a favorable vote on HB 469 and look forward to any questions that the committee might have. Thank you again.
Thank you. Delegate Cullison has a question.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. As someone who has solar panels on her roof, I am a big fan of solar panels. Everything you've said is absolutely true. Just want to be clear, though, it's not that they're free. And so I just want to confirm the payment for the solar panels is built into the lifetime of the solar panels. So the rate of electricity payment is fixed for a certain period by contract, and then that a certain amount of that is going towards the payment towards the panel, I'm assuming. And it's a different arrangement. I just don't want our audience to think that they can get free solar panels completely free if that's not the case.
Delegate, I appreciate your support for solar. And as I said, I'm not in the business. I'm just a volunteer, but I can verify for you that at the Maryland State Fairgrounds, our 7,000 solar panels were completely for free to us. We didn't pay a dime, and we're guaranteed that our electric rate will be 15% below whatever the going BG&E rate is. And with 2 million annual visitors in 42 buildings, and we've been operational since October, the projection that they gave us is right. We're going to save $1.2 million over 15 years, and it did not cost us a cent, only savings.
That's wonderful to know. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Delegate Krebs, followed by Delegate Krim, followed by Delegate Hill.
Thank you all, and thank you for your advocacy for advanced energy economy and saving money for our schools. But one of my concerns is that you all have picked a certain advanced energy option, which is solar, and I appreciate that. But in our county, we've been very, very successful financially with geothermal. We've done many projects. We're probably first in the state with our geothermal renovations, new schools, new library, all geothermal. So I guess for the bill sponsor, why have you just chosen one particular method, solar, instead of basically, MACO said they would not oppose creating a mandatory consideration for state-funded projects of all renewable sources. Why would we not go in that manner? Because it changes. And as I said, we're very successful with geothermal, and I would hate to see us have to move away from that.
So thank you, Delegate Krebs, for that question. So geothermal saves energy that you're using, but solar panels create energy. Mr.
He still heat the school.
Right. But this is a way to create renewable energy.
All right. I would just consider all the above. Thank you.
Thank you. Delegate Krim, followed by Delegate Hill.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So Delegate Forbes, has there been any discussion with the Stadium Authority, because they'll be supervising a lot of the school construction under the Built to Learn Act?
There hasn't, but I will enter into discussions with them. That's a very good point. Thank you.
Okay. And I just want to also ask you, is there anything in your bill about the cost of the building? So like we do a lot of bond
Since this is your second, Delegate Krim, you may not know, we only allow one question.
I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman.
I'll tell you later.
Thank you. Thank you. You're a guest, but same rules. Delegate Hill.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Great bill. I'm asking as one who's pushed very, very hard to just get us to agree that our building should be LEED 55 compliant and pushing that up the hill. You've got sort of two parts. One is that the roof will be able to sustain the weight of solars, and then that they actually have to use them. What is your feeling if it were the committee's decision to just go with the first part, that we want to be prepared, that that option is there, that the roofs have to be able to sustain that without going through future renovations, but demurred on actually requiring that solar panels be?
I would think we were farther down the field, and I would accept that.
Thank you.
Because I know that if the building is designed to capture the energy, that is a big step forward.
Thank you.
Thank you. This concludes, there's chair seeing no further questions. This concludes the hearing on House Bill 469. Our last bill of the afternoon, House Bill 454, Delegate Darrell Barnes, State and Local Procurement Payment Practices. Delegate Barnes.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chairman, committee. Trying to get, y'all just popped me in, so I'm trying to get ready. But for the record, my name is Delegate Darrell Barnes. I am here to present on House Bill 454. It is so good to be back before you again today. I have another exciting bill that I think the committee should wrap their arms around, because it allows us to make a difference and an impact here in the state of Maryland. House Bill 454, affectionately known as Net 15, gives us an opportunity by replacing the 30 days with 15 days to move closer in line with protecting the pockets and interests of our small business community. which we know has been greatly impacted by the ongoing pandemic. This bill protects and supports the financial interest of small businesses so we can thrive in Maryland. Even more so, we still navigate through the challenges of the pandemic. This bill will also have seen the importance of our small business and how greatly our constituents have been impacted. At the end of the day, this bill changes our contracting and procurement here in the state of Maryland. It puts us in line with what we see that's going on in the District of Columbia and the state, and the federal government. This bill has been presented last year. I've also presented it in the Senate. People have come to me and said, with Delegate Barnes, it is hard for us to get paid in the state of Maryland in a timely manner. Our procurements are taking anywhere from 30 days to 45 days, and in some cases, 90 days to get paid. We know that it can be done. This body has just passed a $1.3 billion stimulus relief package. I believe that this falls in the same line that a lot of our small businesses would have an opportunity to survive only if they could get paid what is owed to them in a timely manner. That payment that will get them in 15 days or less allows them to meet payroll, operating expenses, and other necessary items for their business. Within you guys' package, you all should have received some notable names that support this bill: the Maryland Chamber of Commerce, the Greater Bethesda Chamber of Commerce, IBEW, even the Maryland Department of Transportation did not take a position on it, Bill. But there are so many people in desperate need right now. Our small business is one of them, and they have come to me time and time again asking for this body to be able to assist them, especially in this time of need. And with that, Mr. Chairman, I ask for a favorable vote.
Thank you, Delegate Barnes. There are 4 witnesses who wish to provide oral testimony in support: Bruce Beriano, Champ McCullough, Darrell Carrington, Stephanie Bagley. In that order, please.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman and members of the House Health and Government Operations Committee. It's a pleasure to testify before this committee twice in one day. I enjoy it, really do. I strongly applaud, on behalf of my client ACE, Delegate Barnes's bill and urge its adoption. ACE is a association of specialty subcontractors, union contractors in the construction field. And this is a bill, sincerely, that what this legislative COVID session should be all about. The primary concern of this legislature, respectfully, beyond passing the budget and the capital budget and some other very important issues, which I'm not ignoring, this legislature has to provide real, quick, meaningful relief to businesses, to people, to respectfully have money in their pockets so they can meet urgent bills and meet the difficulties of the economic situation as a result of COVID. We all know the phrase, and it's real: time is money. And this is what this bill's about. Time is money. And this is money owed. And the sooner this money gets in the hands of small MBE, veteran, minority businesses that are due and owed this money, they will spend it. It'll multiply. It will help our state's economy and tax base. And again, I welcome and I thank Delegate Barnes for this bill and pursuing this issue, and really urge you to pass it favorably and strongly. Again, this is what this session is all about: helping and giving relief during this COVID crisis. House Bill 454 is that. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr.
Happy to
McCullough.
answer any questions.
Champ McCullough on behalf of the Maryland Association of General Contractors, also in support of the bill. You have my written testimony, and I don't want to be redundant. So let me ask you to focus on this from a different perspective. One of the issues that really has come to the forefront and has a great sense of urgency is dealing with underserved and disadvantaged communities. The companies that this bill would benefit the most are precisely those minority-owned, thinly capitalized companies that are very dependent on having a reliable cash flow. Now, I do not mean to suggest that DGS or MDOT or any of the contracting agencies are deliberately trying to prey upon disadvantaged communities. But that is the effect of the current payment practices. Will this be expensive to cure? Yes. It will require investment on that part of the state and investment on part of the municipalities and counties as well. But this is money well spent. It will have a measurable, direct, important impact on the very communities that I know the legislature is intent on trying to deal with and remedy some historic practices. This is a real opportunity to do something that you can count the results in dollars and cents, and you can see the results in the growth and stability of minority and disadvantaged contractors. So I urge you to give this bill a favorable report, and I salute Delegate Barnes for introducing it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. McCullough. Mr. Carrington?
Neither Mr. Carrington nor Ms. Bagley are in the room.
Okay. Are there any questions of the sponsor or of the two witnesses who have provided testimony in support of the bill? Delegate Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, panel. I do have one question. The 15 days, is that reasonable? Can we do that as a state through the comptroller's office, get these bills paid within 15 days, get through our process, or are we going to have to change our whole process?
I would say that it is more than doable. I am sure that the opponents coming on behind me will say that it is difficult, that they have to add additional manpower, that it's going to cost more money. But I dare to say that if other states and the federal government can do it, and yes, they have a larger budget, it can be done. Some agencies do pay within that 30-day time frame, but there are many within the state of Maryland that does not. And I think we have an opportunity to fall in line with a lot of them to ensure that our small and minority-owned businesses here in the state of Maryland are getting paid in a timely manner.
Thank you, Delegate. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Okay, we now have Delegate Chisholm. Sorry, you have a question.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Delegate Barnes, for bringing this. I'll be honest with you, I like this bill. I'm just confused by the fiscal note, because if I look at this, let's say over a 6-month period, we're paying now, let's say we pay out 1,000 procurement contracts. Well, the fact that we make it move it from 30 to 15 doesn't change that total number. So I don't know why we have to add so many additional staff, and they're saying that it's going to put a major financial impact. Can either of you speak to, I'm perplexed on why we would need that much additional staff just to move up a process to make it more efficient and quicker.
You know, Delegate Chisholm, I feel the same way. And I asked that question last year. And it's another question that I ask again this year, because I do not believe that you need that much additional manpower in order to be able to process a person's procurement in order to pay them in 15 days or less. So I'm just as complex as you are.
So the easy answer is work faster.
For me, yes,
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, we have two witnesses. Seeing no further questions for the proponents, we have two witnesses in opposition, Alex Butler and Justin Fiore.
Good afternoon, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee. Alex Butler with the Maryland Association of Counties, here in opposition to House Bill 454 as it applies to counties, not as it applies to the state. Counties use a variety of different processes across many different types of local government operations. There are cases where they need that full 30 days to process invoice, verify the invoice, and all associated checks are complete, and then remit payment to vendors. Counties do their best to work with vendors to pay these invoices as quickly as possible, but often needing the full 30 days. In certain situations, they need that full 30 days. However, they do try and make payments as quickly as possible. The bill's fiscal note is very synonymous with the feedback we received from counties, and that is that we would need significant new resources to comply with the bill's mandate that cuts the time for payments in half. Counties do their best to work with vendors, but sometimes they just need that full 30 days to make sure they're wisely distributing taxpayer dollars. Counties can understand and appreciate the intent of the bill, but simply put, we don't have the economies of scale of the federal government, and we don't have the staff. We cannot, in every situation, make these payments within only 15 days. However, counties work as best as possible with their local businesses to make timely payment. We want positive relationships with vendors, and timely payment, as you've heard, goes a long way. For those reasons, make a respectful request, an unfavorable report on House Bill 454. Thank you.
Mr. Fiore, Justin Fiore.
Justin's been having some internet issues, so he's not in the room with us right now.
Okay. Are there any questions of this witness? Yes, Delegate Hill and then Delegate Charles.
Thank you. Mr. Butler, thank you very much. This sounds similar to responses I was getting trying to get some private insurance companies to pay their bills in a more timely fashion last year. We didn't get very far either. So I get the purpose behind the bill. You heard Delegate Chisholm's question, I presume, and I just, can you explain? I mean, I can understand that you might have initial catch up moving from 30 days to 15, but once you're caught up, isn't the process the same? What exactly are you doing that requires additional staff once you've taken care of the backlog?
Well, as it moves through different departments and different functions, it requires different checks. It's not a simple, one person looking over it. We got to make sure that these things are paid properly and that it's done correctly with taxpayer funds. In often cases, we need several different departments to take a look at it, and we need to verify that the invoice is correct and make sure that we get the right payment out to the vendor. And that can take up to 30 days to get it along through the process and make things work properly.
Delegate Charles, followed by Delegate Lewis.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This question is for you, Alex. You mentioned you said quickly as possible. What type of financial system are you guys using across MACO? And how can we get something better so it can be as quickly as possible, as you stated?
Counties use different types, and I'm happy to send in some information to the committee on that. I know that in some cases we use a peer-to-peer, decentralized peer-to-peer payment, and oftentimes that can require a little bit more work, and we need some more time. So we do try and streamline procurement as quickly as possible, but in the instance where we need to cut the time in half that we have to make these payments, and then interest is going to start accruing, we would definitely need to staff up, and I think that's demonstrated in the fiscal note at both the state and local level.
Delegate Lewis.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you to the sponsor and panelists. My question was, I think for Mr. Butler, if a vendor finds they are waiting more than 30 days for compensation, what mechanisms of redress do they have? Is there an ombudsman or some way for them to get a response?
I'm not sure. Every county is a little bit different. I mean, we do try and make these payments within that 30 days. In the event that we can't, I would assume that there is a real notification process there and a relationship with the vendor that we would discuss that with them. I'm not sure, but I will certainly get you some more information on exactly what we do with follow through.
That would be great. Thank you. Thank you, Mr.
Thank you very
Chair.
much, Delegate.
We'll have one last witness. Daryl Carrington had signed up in support, was a little late getting into the waiting room. So, Mr. Carrington.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Daryl Carrington here in support of this bill. I'd like to thank the sponsor for putting this bill in. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, great. Thank you, sir. And I do appreciate the county's difficulty and perhaps expediting these things, but from a small business perspective, it's very hard for us to be able to have, it's not just 30 days, sometimes it's 90 days, 120 days or more. It's even getting a contract back before you can even send in your invoice to be paid on your purchase order. And I think that as we have been in this new reality of COVID and having to do so many things electronically, I would hope that some of these systems have been updated to be more expeditious. And I would think that we should be working to make sure that especially our small businesses that are very grateful for being able to work with our government agencies and the like, have the ability to get access to payment, but more importantly, even to have, as Delegate Lewis, I believe, asked a question, an ombudsman, someone to talk to, someone who's actually a part of the process that you can say, well, where is my paperwork? And unfortunately, that's a very difficult thing for vendors to be able to get access to. And again, I mean, just to be funny, we can't break bad and start, screaming and yelling about things because we don't want to lose the ability to have the contract in the future. So I really appreciate the committee's consideration. I know it's not an easy issue, but my firm, we offer our assistance in helping the committee to try to find a resolution. So we ask for your favorable report. We really appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Carrington. There being no further questions, there being no further witnesses and no further bills, this concludes today's hearings. Thank you very much for your participation, and we will see you all on the floor and then in committee tomorrow.